Lisa Carter walked through the long metal hallway of Nexus Prime Station, her black shoes making soft sounds on the polished floor. The walls were covered with strange symbols and lights that moved in patterns she did not understand. Behind her walked Dr. Kevin Murphy, a thin man with gray hair who carried a heavy bag full of books and papers. Next to him was Colonel Jack Sullivan, a tall soldier whose uniform had many medals on it. Lisa felt nervous, but tried not to show it. Today was the day humans would finally meet the Galactic Council. Earth had been trying to join this group of alien worlds for 30 years. Each time they asked, the aliens said no. They said humans were not ready. They said humans were too young and too violent. But today was different. Today the aliens had agreed to let humans try one more time. The hallway ended at a huge door made of some kind of blue metal. 2 robot guards stood next to it. They looked like metal spiders with red eyes. One of them spoke in a voice that sounded like breaking glass. "State your names and purpose." "Ambassador Lisa Carter from Earth," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Dr. Kevin Murphy, human historian. Colonel Jack Sullivan, military advisor. We are here for the council meeting." The robot's eyes flashed. "You may enter, do not touch anything, do not speak unless spoken to. Follow the blue lights on the floor." The door opened with a sound like thunder. Inside was the biggest room Lisa had ever seen. The ceiling was so high she could not see it. Floating in the air were hundreds of seats arranged in circles. In each seat sat a different kind of alien being. The blue lights led them to 3 small chairs at the bottom of the room. As they sat down, Lisa looked up at the aliens staring down at them. She had seen pictures before, but seeing them in person was different. The Zephyrians looked like giant crystals that had learned to move. Their leader, Chairman Veltar, was the size of a small building and sparkled with many colors. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music made of breaking glass. Next to him sat the Vorthok delegation. They looked like huge octopuses with purple skin and eyes that glowed green. Their leader, Councillor Rushak, had tentacles that moved like snakes as he talked. The Klaxon representatives looked like giant ants that walked on 2 legs. Their queen, Zixara, was 3 times bigger than the others and had wings that made buzzing sounds. There were dozens of other alien types too, each one stranger than the last. Chairman Veltar's voice filled the room. "Welcome, humans of Earth. We have agreed to consider your request for membership in our council. However, you must understand that this is a great honor. Our civilization is millions of years old. We have seen the rise and fall of countless species." Dr. Murphy leaned forward in his chair. "Thank you for this opportunity. We believe humanity can contribute much to the galactic community. Our history shows that we are capable of great things." Loud laughter echoed through the chamber. The sound came from dozens of different alien throats, creating a noise like a storm made of voices. Councillor Threshak's tentacles wiggled as he spoke. "Your history, young human, your entire species has existed for less time than I have been alive. What could you possibly teach beings who have mastered the stars since before your son was born?" Kevin felt his face turn red with anger, but he kept his voice calm. "We may be young, but we have learned much in our short time. We have art, science, philosophy. We have overcome great challenges and grown stronger." Queen Zixara's wings buzzed louder. "Overcome challenges? Your species knows only war and destruction. You fight each other over pieces of dirt and drops of water. You poison your own world and kill your own kind. This is what you call achievement." Chairman Veltar raised one of his crystal arms, and the room became quiet. "The Galactic Council has studied your species for many years. We have watched your wars, your cruelty, your endless conflicts. In our long history, we have learned that violence is the mark of a primitive species. We evolved beyond such behavior eons ago." Lisa stood up, feeling anger rise in her chest. "With respect, Chairman, every species has a violent past. Surely, your own people faced similar challenges when they were young." The laughter returned, even louder than before. Veltar's crystal body flashed with bright colors. "Young ambassador, that is where you are wrong. The great civilizations of this council achieved enlightenment through wisdom, not warfare. We built our empires through peaceful means. We united our worlds through understanding, not bloodshed." Threshak's green eyes glowed brighter. "The VOP brought peace to 17 sectors through our gentle absorption process. No violence was needed. Species joined us willingly when they saw the benefits of our advanced culture." Queen Zixara clicked her mandibles together. "The Klaxon Collective restored dead worlds to life through our ecological mastery. We saved entire ecosystems from destruction. We are builders, not destroyers." Colonel Sullivan clenched his fists, but said nothing. Kevin looked down at his papers, feeling defeated. Lisa realized that no matter what they said, the aliens had already made up their minds about humanity. Chairman Veltar spoke again, his voice now sounding bored. After much consideration, the Galactic Council grants Earth provisional membership. In the lowest tier, you will have limited access to trade routes and basic technologies. However, you will not be allowed to participate in major decisions or access advanced knowledge until you prove your species has evolved beyond its violent nature. The meeting was over. As they walked back through the metal hallways, Lisa felt like they had failed before they even started. The aliens saw humans as nothing more than primitive barbarians, who were not worth their time. But Kevin was thinking about something else. The aliens spoke of their peaceful pasts with great pride. They claimed to have never known war or violence. Something about their stories bothered him, though he could not yet put his finger on what it was. 3 days passed after the council meeting, and Lisa Carter could not sleep. She kept thinking about the way the aliens had looked at them, like they were looking at insects or small children. The provisional membership they had been given was almost worse than no membership at all. Earth could buy basic supplies and send small trading ships, but humans were banned from most of the galaxy and could not access any advanced technology. Lisa sat in her small room on the station, looking out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, waiting to hear if their representatives had succeeded or failed. She had to find a way to change the aliens' minds, but she did not know how. A soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Dr. Murphy standing in the hallway holding a cup of coffee and looking tired. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No," Lisa said, letting him into her room. "I keep thinking there has to be something we can do, some way to prove we deserve better than this." Kevin sat down in the only chair and rubbed his eyes. "I've been reading everything I can find about the council species. Their histories, their cultures, their achievements. Lisa, something doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" "Their stories are too perfect. No species develops for millions of years without making mistakes or facing serious problems. But according to their official records, they just somehow became peaceful and wise without ever going through the same struggles we did." Lisa poured herself some water from a small bottle. "Maybe they really are more advanced than us. Maybe they found better ways to solve problems." Kevin shook his head. "I don't think so. In the station's database, I found references to events that don't match their official stories. Wars that are called peaceful transitions, and conquests that are described as voluntary unions. I think they're hiding something." Before Lisa could respond, her communication device beeped. A message appeared on the small screen, written in the strange symbols the aliens used. Kevin looked at it and frowned. "That's a formal challenge request. Someone wants to meet with us." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a meeting room with Chairman Vel. The giant crystal being had somehow squeezed himself into the small space, and his body filled most of the room. His voice was quieter than it had been in the council chamber, but still sounded like musical glass. "Ambassador Carter, I have been thinking about your species since our meeting. The council believes humans are not ready for full membership, but perhaps there is a way for you to prove us wrong." Lisa felt hope rise in her chest. "What kind of way?" "A competition of histories. Each species will present their greatest achievements and most important moments to a special panel of judges. The winner will gain access to the Archive Vault, the most precious collection of knowledge in the galaxy. For your people, this would mean instant access to technologies and wisdom that could advance Earth by thousands of years." Kevin leaned forward. "What would we have to compete against?" Veltar's crystal body flickered with different colors. "The Zephyrian Great Crystal Wars, where we united 17 star systems through enlightened conquest. The Vorthax Gentle absorption campaigns that brought peace to entire sectors. The Klaxon ecological restoration projects that saved countless worlds. Your species would need to present something equally impressive." Lisa and Kevin looked at each other. Human history was full of wars, mistakes, and failures. How could they compete with millions of years of alien achievements? "How long do we have to prepare?" Lisa asked. 3 weeks. The competition will be held here on Nexus Prime, with representatives from every member species watching. If you win, Earth gains full membership and access to all council resources. If you lose, your provisional status becomes permanent, and Earth will never be allowed to apply for advancement again. After Veltar left, Lisa and Kevin sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Kevin spoke. "We have to try. This might be our only chance. But how can we compete with their histories? They have millions of years of achievements. We have a few thousand years of mostly fighting each other." Kevin stood up and began pacing around the small room. Maybe that's exactly what we need to show them. Maybe the fact that we fought and struggled and made mistakes is what makes us strong. I don't understand. Think about it, Lisa. They claim their species never went through what we went through. They say they were always peaceful and wise. But how do you learn wisdom without making mistakes? How do you become strong without facing challenges? Lisa thought about this. You think they're lying about their past? I think they've forgotten their past, or maybe they've hidden it so well that they believe their own lies. But I have an idea. Instead of trying to compete with their perfect stories, what if we tell them the truth about ours? Over the next few days, Kevin worked day and night in the station's library. He gathered records, documents, and files about human history. But instead of looking for the greatest victories and achievements, he collected stories of failure, defeat, and disaster. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes joined them on the fourth day. She was a young intelligence officer who had been sent from Earth to help with security. She was smart and curious, and she quickly understood what Kevin was trying to do. You want to show them our worst moments? She asked, looking through Kevin's files. The wars, the genocides, the environmental disasters, not just the worst moments, Kevin explained. I want to show them how we learned from those moments, how each failure taught us something important, how our mistakes made us stronger. Sarah nodded slowly. It's risky. They already think we're primitive. This could make them think we're even worse. Or it could show them something they've forgotten, Kevin said. The value of facing hard truths. As they worked, Sarah began using her intelligence training to dig deeper into the station's computer systems. She found old files and archived records that the aliens thought were safely hidden. What she discovered made her excited and worried at the same time. Kevin, Lisa, you need to see this, she said one evening, calling them to her computer screen. I found some files about the Zephyrian Great Crystal Wars, but these aren't the official records. These are military reports from the time. The files she showed them told a very different story than the one Chairman Velter had shared. The enlightened conquest had involved destroying entire planets that refused to surrender. Billions of beings had died in ways that were far from peaceful. There's more, Sarah said, opening another file. The Vortex gentle absorption wasn't gentle at all. They used biological weapons to change other species into versions of themselves. And the Klaxon ecological restoration involved wiping out existing ecosystems and replacing them with ones they preferred. Lisa stared at the screen. They've been lying to us. To everyone. Not lying exactly, Kevin said thoughtfully. I think they've been lying to themselves for so long that they believe it's true. They've rewritten their histories to hide the parts they're ashamed of. So what do we do with this information? Sarah asked. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. We tell them a story they've never heard before. A story about a species that remembers its mistakes and learns from them. Dr. Kevin Murphy had not slept for 3 days. His small room was covered with papers, books, and computer screens showing different parts of human history. Coffee cups and empty food containers sat on every surface. His eyes were red and tired, but his mind was more focused than it had ever been. He was not preparing the kind of presentation the aliens expected. While they would show their greatest victories and most beautiful achievements, Kevin was building something completely different. He was creating a timeline of human failure and the lessons learned from each disaster. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes knocked on his door at 6 in the morning. When he opened it, she was holding 2 cups of coffee and looking worried. Kevin, you look terrible. When was the last time you ate something? I don't remember, he said, taking one of the cups. But I think I'm onto something important. Come look at this. Sarah followed him into the messy room and looked at the wall where he had posted hundreds of pieces of paper. Each paper showed a different event from human history, connected by red strings to show how they were related. This is the Black Death, Kevin said, pointing to one section. It killed 1/3 of Europe in the 1300s. Terrible disaster, right? But look what happened afterward. People learned about disease and started developing better medicine. Cities built better sanitation systems. The labor shortage gave common people more power and helped end feudalism. He moved to another section. World War I. Millions died in the most horrible war in human history at that time. But afterward, people created the League of Nations, the first attempt at world government. It failed, but it taught us lessons we used to build the United Nations after World War II. Sarah studied the timeline carefully. So you're saying that every disaster made us stronger somehow? Not stronger exactly, wiser. Each time humans faced a terrible situation, some of us learned something important from it. The knowledge got passed down and helped us handle similar problems better in the future. Sarah sat down in the only clean chair. But Kevin, this is still showing them all our worst moments. The aliens already think we're violent and primitive. Won't this just prove their point? Kevin smiled for the first time in days. That's exactly what I'm counting on. They're going to think they're seeing proof of human barbarism, but then I'm going to show them something they've never seen before, what the courage to face ugly truths and learn from them. While Kevin worked on his presentation, Sarah continued her investigation into the alien historical records. She had gotten better at breaking into their computer systems, and each day she found more evidence that their official histories were not complete. She discovered that the Zephyrian civilization had gone through at least 12 major civil wars over the past million years. Each time, the winners had rewritten the history books to make themselves look better. The current version of their history had removed all mention of internal conflict, making it seem like they had always been united and peaceful. Records were even more disturbing. Their gentle absorption process involved using chemicals to change the brains of other species, making them think like Vorthak. Entire civilizations had been wiped out not through violence, but through forced mental conversion. The victims had not even known they were being destroyed because their minds had been changed to make them happy about it. The Klaxon files showed that their ecological restoration projects involved deciding that certain types of life were inefficient and replacing them with engineered alternatives. They had destroyed thousands of unique ecosystems and replaced them with standardized environments that looked beautiful but had no diversity. It's worse than we thought, Sarah told Lisa and Kevin during one of their evening meetings. They didn't just edit their histories, they've forgotten how to see their own mistakes. They've convinced themselves that everything they did was good and right. Lisa shook her head. But how is that possible? Don't they have historians like Kevin who study the past and ask hard questions? That's the problem, Kevin said. They've been so successful for so long that they stopped questioning themselves. When you win every battle and never face consequences for your actions, it becomes easy to believe you never do anything wrong. Colonel Jack Sullivan, who had been quiet during most of their planning, finally spoke up. This is all very interesting, but how does it help us win the competition? Even if we prove they're hypocrites, that doesn't mean they'll respect us more. You're right, Kevin said. That's why I'm not going to focus on exposing their lies. I'm going to focus on showing them what they've lost. What do you mean? Kevin walked over to his timeline and pointed to a section near the end. Look at this, the space program. We went from the first airplane to landing on the moon in less than 70 years. We did it not because we were perfect, but because we remembered our failures and used them to do better. He moved his finger to another point, the internet. We built it to survive nuclear war, but it became a tool for sharing knowledge and connecting people. We turned a weapon into something that brought the world together. Sarah understood what he was getting at. You want to show them that our ability to learn from mistakes is what makes us valuable to the galaxy. Exactly. They've become stagnant because they refuse to acknowledge failure. They keep doing the same things over and over because they believe they're already perfect. But humans are still growing, still learning, still changing. Lisa looked worried. It's a good theory, Kevin, but what if they don't see it that way? What if they just think we're making excuses for being violent? Kevin was quiet for a moment. Then we lose, and Earth stays isolated forever. But if we try to compete with them on their terms, we'll definitely lose. This is the only chance we have. As the days passed, strange things began happening on the station. Security cameras malfunctioned. In certain areas, computer systems crashed and restarted with no explanation. Some of the alien delegates received anonymous messages containing information they thought was safely hidden. That Sarah realized that someone else was working to expose the truth about alien history. She began trying to track down who it was, using her intelligence training to follow digital trails through the station's computer networks. One night, she found what she was looking for. Hidden in a secure section of the station were files belonging to a group that called itself the Truth Archive. The group had members from dozens of different species, all working secretly to preserve real historical records that the governments wanted to hide. Sarah made contact with them and discovered that they had been waiting for years for someone like humanity to come along. A species that was willing to tell the truth about its own past might be able to help them reveal the truth about everyone else's past. They want to help us, Sarah told Kevin and Lisa the next morning, but they're asking for something in return. They want us to promise that if we win access to the archive vault, we'll make all the real historical records available to everyone. Lisa thought about this carefully. That could be dangerous. If we expose the lies that entire civilizations are built on, it could cause chaos. Maybe, Kevin said. Or maybe it could set everyone free to start growing again. With only 2 days left before the competition, Kevin made his final decision about what to include in the presentation. He would start with humanity's darkest moments and show how each one had led to growth and improvement. He would end with a challenge to the aliens to remember their own capacity for growth. It was risky, but it was the only path he could see that might actually work. As he looked at his completed timeline one last time, Kevin hoped that somewhere in the vast galaxy, there were still beings who remembered that wisdom comes not from perfection, but from the courage to face difficult truths. The Grand Council chamber had been transformed for the historic competition. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled every seat, floating platform, and viewing area. The air buzzed with excitement and the sounds of dozens of different languages being translated in real time. Giant screens hung from the ceiling so that everyone could see the presentations clearly. Lisa Carter sat in the front row, her hands folded tightly in her lap to keep them from shaking. Next to her, Colonel Sullivan watched the crowd with the careful eyes of a soldier, while Dr. Kevin Murphy reviewed his notes one final time. In 3 hours, he would either save humanity's future in the galaxy or destroy it completely. Chairman Veltar's crystal body caught the light from hundreds of sources as he rose to address the crowd. His voice filled the enormous space without any effort. Beings of the galaxy, today we witness a historic event. For great civilizations will present their finest achievements, and one will earn the ultimate prize, access to the archive vault. The crowd fell silent as Veltar continued. Each species will have exactly 1 hour to present their case. The judging panel consists of the eldest members of the council, those who have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They will choose the winner based on the significance, beauty, and lasting impact of the achievements presented. Velt gestured toward the center of the chamber, where a circular platform waited. The Zephyrian Collective will present first, followed by the Vorthok Union, then the Klaxon Swarm, and finally the humans of Earth. Kevin felt his stomach tighten. Going last meant the aliens would set the standard, and it would be high, but it also meant he would have the final word. The Zephyrian presentation began with music that sounded like 1,000 crystal bells ringing in perfect harmony. Images appeared on the giant screens, showing cities made entirely of living crystal that stretched across entire continents. The crystals changed color with the emotions of their inhabitants, creating art that was also architecture, that was also music. Veltar himself narrated their history, his voice filled with pride. Behold the great crystal wars, where 17 star systems united under Zephyrian guidance, not through violence, but through the irresistible beauty of our civilization. Species after species chose to join us when they saw what we had achieved. The images showed vast fleets of crystal ships arriving at primitive worlds. Wherever they landed, magnificent cities grew from the ground like flowers blooming in fast motion. The native populations appeared happy and grateful as they integrated into Zephyrian society. For 3 million years, we have brought order and beauty to chaos, Veltar concluded. We have turned savage wilderness into gardens of light. We have elevated countless primitive species to share in our magnificence. The crowd applauded with voices, tentacles, wings, and appendages Kevin could not even identify. The Zephyrian presentation had been flawless, beautiful, and completely convincing. Next came the Vorthok, and Counselor Threshak's green eyes glowed as he began their presentation. The screens showed underwater cities of impossible grace, with buildings that flowed like living things and technology that seemed to be made of water itself. The Vorthok have perfected the art of unity, Threshak said, his tentacles moving in patterns that somehow added meaning to his words. Through our gentle absorption process, we have eliminated conflict, suffering, and loneliness throughout 12 galactic sectors. The images showed Vorthok ships arriving at worlds torn by war and disease. Wherever they went, the fighting stopped and the suffering ended. Different species worked together in perfect harmony, their conflicts forgotten as they joined the greater Vorthok community. We do not conquer, Threshak explained. We heal. We take species that are destroying themselves with hatred and teach them to love one another as we love ourselves. For 2 million years, we have spread peace through understanding. Again, the crowd erupted in appreciation. Kevin noticed that many of the alien delegates seemed genuinely moved by the presentation. Queen Zixara took the platform next, her massive wings creating a low humming sound that somehow made her voice more powerful. The screens filled with Images of dead worlds transformed into green paradises, of extinct species brought back to life, of ecosystems restored to perfect balance. The Klaxon Collective has become the guardian of life itself, she announced. We have saved 10,000 worlds from ecological collapse. We have restored biodiversity to regions devastated by lesser species. We have proven that intelligence and nature can work together in perfect harmony. The images showed Klaxon workers carefully replanting forests, cleaning polluted oceans, and reintroducing animals to environments where they had been extinct for thousands of years. Every world they touched became more beautiful and more alive. For 1.5 million years, we have fought entropy itself, Zixara said. Where others see only death and decay, we create life and growth. We are the gardeners of the galaxy. The applause this time was thunderous. Kevin looked around and saw that even some of the human delegations seemed impressed by what they had witnessed. How could humanity's brief and troubled history compete with millions of years of such magnificent achievements? Finally, it was his turn. Kevin walked slowly to the center platform, carrying only a small device that would control the screens. He looked up at thousands of alien faces staring down at him, most of them already convinced that humanity had nothing worthwhile to offer. Honored beings of the galaxy, he began, his voice sounding small after the powerful presentations that had come before. You have seen 3 great civilizations, present millions of years of achievement. Humanity offers you something different. We offer you the truth. The first image that appeared on the screens was not beautiful. It showed human soldiers in a muddy trench during World War I, their faces hollow with exhaustion and fear. This is the battle of the sum, Kevin said. In one day, 60,000 human beings died fighting over a few miles of worthless ground. Murmurs of disgust rippled through the crowd. Some aliens turned away from the screens in revulsion. Kevin continued, showing images of the Holocaust, of slavery, of environmental destruction. This is humanity at its worst. We have been cruel to each other and to our world. We have made every mistake it is possible to make. The alien audience began to grow restless. Some were laughing, others looked angry that their time was being wasted with such horrible images. But then Kevin's presentation took a turn. The Battle of the Sum taught us that human life is precious and should not be wasted. From that lesson came the Geneva Conventions, laws that protect civilians and prisoners of war even in the middle of conflict. A new image appeared, medics, treating wounded soldiers from both sides of a battle, following rules that said some things were more important than victory. The Holocaust taught us that hatred and prejudice lead to unimaginable evil. From that lesson came the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the idea that every person has value regardless of their race, religion, or beliefs. The screen showed people of different colors and cultures working together to build something better than what had been destroyed. Kevin moved through human history, showing how each terrible mistake had led to growth and improvement, how the environmental disasters of the industrial age had led to conservation movements, how nuclear weapons had led to international cooperation to prevent their use. We went to space not because we were perfect, but because we remembered our failures, Kevin said as images of rockets and space stations filled the screens. We built these ships with technology first developed for war, then transformed into tools of exploration and hope. The crowd had grown quiet. Kevin could see confusion on many faces, as if they were seeing something they had never encountered before. You have heard 3 species claim millions of years of perfect achievement, Kevin said, his voice growing stronger. Humanity offers you something they cannot. We offer you the wisdom that comes from surviving our own mistakes. We offer you the strength that comes from facing ugly truths and choosing to be better. The chamber fell completely silent as Kevin spoke his final words. We are here not because we are perfect, but because we are still learning, still growing, still changing, and we believe that in a galaxy full of species that have forgotten how to grow, that makes us exactly what you need. The silence stretched on for long seconds after Kevin finished speaking. Then, slowly, scattered applause began from different parts of the chamber. Not the thunderous approval the other species had received, but something else, something thoughtful and uncertain, as if the audience was not sure what they had just witnessed, but knew it was important. As Kevin walked back to his seat, he noticed that some of the alien delegates were looking at each other with expressions he had never seen before. For the first time in the competition, they looked like beings who were thinking about something new. The judging panel had withdrawn to deliberate, leaving the massive chamber filled with thousands of beings talking among themselves. The noise was incredible as dozens of different species discussed what they had just witnessed. Some voices sounded angry, others confused. and a few seemed genuinely thoughtful. Dr. Kevin Murphy sat in his chair feeling completely drained. He had given everything he had to that presentation, and now there was nothing left to do but wait. Colonel Sullivan sat beside him with his arms crossed, watching the crowd with suspicious eyes. Ambassador Lisa Carter was talking quietly with some of the younger alien delegates who had approached them after the presentations ended. "I think you got through to some of them," she said when she returned to her seat. A Vorthok scientist told me she had never heard anyone talk about learning from failure before. She seemed genuinely interested in the concept. Kevin nodded but did not feel optimistic. The other presentations had been so magnificent, so perfect, that his display of human weakness and struggle seemed pathetic by comparison. How could ugly truths compete with beautiful lies? Chairman Veltar rose from his position at the center of the chamber. His crystal body reflected the lights and patterns that somehow conveyed authority and finality. "The judging panel has reached its decision," he announced, and the vast room fell silent. Before he could continue, every screen in the chamber suddenly went black. Then red warning lights began flashing, and an alarm sound echoed through the station's corridors. Veltar looked around in confusion as his crystal form flickered with colors that suggested anger and surprise. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. But before anyone could answer, the screens came back to life. But instead of showing the judge's decision, they displayed something else entirely. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes stood up in the human section, a small device in her hand. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all descriptions," she said, her voice somehow being broadcast throughout the chamber. "Before we hear the judge's decision, there's something you all need to see." The screens now showed documents, recordings, and images that looked nothing like the beautiful presentations that had come before. These were military reports, classified files, and hidden archives that had been sealed away for millions of years. "These are the real records of the Great Crystal Wars," Sarah announced as the first set of documents appeared. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and angry shouts as the aliens saw images of Zephyrian crystal ships destroying entire planets that refused to surrender. Billions of beings had been killed when they would not accept Zephyrian rule. Chairman Veltar's crystal body flashed with rage. "This is illegal. These files are classified for the security of the galaxy." "Classified to hide the truth," Sarah replied calmly. More documents appeared, showing how the Zephyrians had rewritten their history books after each conquest, slowly editing out all evidence of violence, until they themselves believed they had always been peaceful. The screens switched to records, and Counselor Threshak made a sound like a wounded animal as classified files revealed the truth about gentle absorption. The process involved releasing biological agents that altered the brain chemistry of other species, making them incapable of disagreeing with Vorthok ideas. Entire civilizations had been mentally enslaved, their original cultures and thoughts erased forever. "These beings did not choose to join us," Sarah said as the horrible truth spread across every screen. "They were changed into something that could not choose anything else." Queen Zixara tried to fly toward the exit, but the chamber doors had been sealed. Her ecological restoration projects were revealed to be something far more sinister. The Klaxons had decided that natural evolution was inefficient and had systematically destroyed ecosystems that did not meet their standards. Thousands of unique species had been declared obsolete and replaced with standardized alternatives. "You have all been living a lie for so long that you forgot it was a lie," Kevin said, standing up to address the chamber. His voice was now being broadcast alongside Sarah's. "Each of your species committed terrible acts, then edited your histories to hide the shame. You convinced yourselves you were perfect, and in doing so you stopped growing." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some aliens shouted denials, others demanded to know where the files had come from, and still others sat in stunned silence as they processed what they were learning about their own people. Sarah held up her device again. These files were preserved by the Truth Archive, a secret organization with members from dozens of species. They have been waiting for centuries for someone brave enough to expose these lies. Beings throughout the chamber began standing up and identifying themselves as members of the Truth Archive. Kevin was amazed to see how many there were young Zephyrians who had suspected their history was incomplete. Vorthok scientists who had found evidence of pre-absorption cultures. Klaxon workers who had questioned why so many species needed to be replaced. "We are not traitors," called out a young Zephyrian whose crystal body was a pale blue color. "We are beings who believe that truth is more important than pride. Our species will never grow again if we cannot face what we have done." Chairman Veltar attempted to regain control of the situation. Even if these allegations were true, which I do not accept, they change nothing about today's competition. The humans have presented their case, and it has been judged. Actually, said a new voice from the judging panel, it changes everything. The speaker was an ancient being that Kevin had never seen before. It looked like it might have once been similar to a Vorthok, but was so old that its tentacles had turned white and its eyes had faded to a pale gray. When it spoke, even the chaos in the chamber quieted to listen. I am Elder Kethma, the ancient being said. I have served on this council longer than any other living being. I have watched species rise and fall for 20 million years, and I remember when these events actually happened. A collective gasp went through the chamber. Even the other judges looked shocked. I was young when the Zephyrians began their expansion, Kethma continued. I saw the worlds they destroyed. I witnessed the Vorthok biological experiments on my own people. I watched the Klaxons decide that entire ecosystems were not worth preserving. But over the centuries, I watched as the truth was slowly erased and replaced with prettier stories. The Elder's faded eyes looked directly at Kevin. Today, for the first time in millions of years, I heard a species voluntarily tell the truth about its failures. The humans did not hide their wars, their cruelties, or their mistakes. They showed us something we had all forgotten, the courage to learn from our worst moments. Veltar's crystal body was flashing rapidly through different colors. Surely you cannot be suggesting that I am suggesting nothing, the Elder interrupted. I am declaring the winner of this competition is not the species with the most impressive achievements. It is the species with the wisdom to face uncomfortable truths. That species is humanity. The chamber exploded into noise again, but this time it was different. Instead of angry shouting, Kevin heard the sounds of beings talking excitedly to each other, asking questions, demanding access to their own real histories. Sarah smiled as she watched the chaos unfold. The Truth Archive has agreed to release all the hidden records, she announced. Every species will finally have access to their complete history, not just the edited versions. As the session dissolved into 1,000 smaller conversations, Kevin realized that something fundamental had changed. The competition had become about much more than just Earth's membership in the galactic community. It had become the beginning of a revolution that would spread across the entire galaxy. For the first time in millions of years, beings throughout the known universe were asking themselves a question they had forgotten how to ask: what really happened? And what can we learn from it? 6 months had passed since the competition that changed everything. Lisa Carter stood in what had once been called the Archive Vault, but was now simply known as the Open Library. The massive underground chamber stretched out further than she could see, filled with floating data crystals, holographic displays, and beings from hundreds of different species all learning together. The transformation had not been easy. In the weeks following the revelation of the hidden histories, some alien civilizations had split apart completely. The Zephyrian collective had broken into 17 different factions, each dealing with the truth about their past in different ways. Some groups had declared the ancient records to be lies and tried to maintain the old stories. Others had embraced the truth so completely that they rejected everything their ancestors had built. But many had chosen a third path. They had accepted both the good and bad parts of their history and begun the difficult work of learning from both. Dr. Kevin Murphy walked up beside Lisa, carrying a datapad filled with notes. His hair was still gray, but his eyes looked brighter than they had in years. The morning briefing is ready, he said. We have requests for historical consultation from 43 different worlds today. Lisa smiled. Kevin had become the galaxy's first director of historical truth, a position that had never existed before because no one had thought it was necessary. His job was to help species recover their real histories and figure out what to do with the knowledge. Any interesting cases? She asked. There's a group of young Klaxons who want to bring back some of the species their ancestors eliminated. They found genetic samples in old archives and think they can recreate them, but they're not sure if that's the right thing to do. What do you think? Kevin shrugged. I think the fact that they're asking the question shows they've learned something important. Their ancestors never wondered if what they were doing was right. They just assumed it was. The sound of wings caught their attention, and they looked up to see Queen Zixara landing nearby. The giant insect looked different than she had 6 months ago. Her mandibles were painted with symbols that Kevin had learned meant seeking wisdom in the ancient Klaxon language. Ambassador Carter, Dr. Murphy, she said, bowing her head in a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable before the revolution. I wanted to thank you personally before you leave for Earth. Lisa was surprised. Thank us, Your Majesty. We turned your entire civilization upside down. Zixara made a sound that Kevin had learned was klaxon laughter. Yes, you did, and it was the best thing that ever happened to us. My people had been doing the same things for 1,000,000 years because we thought we were perfect. Now we know we are not perfect, and we can start learning again. She gestured with one of her clawed hands toward a group of young klaxons who were working with beings from several other species. Look at them. They are asking questions we forgot how to ask. They are imagining things we forgot how to imagine. They are growing. Colonel Jack Sullivan approached their group, looking official. In his new uniform, he had been elected as the first director of galactic security for the new Alliance of Worlds. His job was very different from the old Council's military forces. Instead of protecting lies and maintaining order, he was responsible for protecting truth-tellers and preventing anyone from hiding important information. The transport to Earth is ready when you are, he told Lisa. President Martinez is eager to hear your report. Lisa nodded, but she felt reluctant to leave. Earth had indeed gained full membership in the galactic community, but that was just the beginning. The old Galactic Council had dissolved completely, replaced by the Alliance of Worlds based on principles that humanity had helped establish. The new alliance had 3 basic rules. First, all member species had to maintain complete and honest historical records. Second, no species could restrict access to information that affected other species. Third, every major decision had to be made with input from species that might be affected by it. It sounded simple, but implementing these rules had been incredibly complicated. Some species had thousands of years of lies to sort through. Others had been hiding technological developments that could help solve galactic problems. A few had been secretly manipulating other species for their own benefit. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes had become the Director of Information Transparency, leading teams of investigators who worked to uncover hidden truths throughout the galaxy. Had told Lisa that they were discovering new secrets almost every day, some of them thousands of years old. The hardest part, Sarah had explained, is not finding the lies. It's helping people figure out what to do once they know the truth. As they walked toward the transport ship, Kevin stopped to look back at the open library one more time. Through the transparent walls, he could see beings from dozens of species reading each other's histories, learning about mistakes and successes that spanned millions of years. Do you think it will work? Lisa asked, following his gaze. I don't know, Kevin said honestly. But for the first time in galactic history, everyone is asking that question instead of just assuming they already know the answer. The transport ship was small but comfortable, designed for diplomatic missions rather than military operations. As they settled into their seats for the journey back to Earth, Lisa thought about everything that had changed. The most important change was not political or technological. It was psychological. For millions of years, the dominant species of the galaxy had believed they had reached the end of their development. They thought they had solved all the important problems and learned all the necessary lessons. Humanity had shown them that growth never ends. There are always new challenges to face, new mistakes to learn from, new ways to become better. The key was having the courage to admit when you were wrong and the wisdom to change when you learned something new. The ship's communication system activated, and a familiar voice filled the cabin. It was Elder Kethmer speaking from the council. Chambers they had just left. Attention beings of the Alliance, the ancient voice said. Today marks exactly 6 months since the Great Revelation began. In that time, we have uncovered more truth about our shared history than we had acknowledged in the previous 1,000,000 years. Lisa could hear excitement in the old being's voice, something she had never noticed before the changes began. Some of our people have asked if all this truth-telling is worth the pain and confusion it has caused. I want to share with you something I learned from our human friends. The truth is not valuable because it makes us feel good. The truth is valuable because it helps us grow. The message continued for several minutes, but Lisa found herself thinking about something else. She was thinking about the children she had seen in the open library, young beings from dozens of different species, all learning together. They were studying complete histories that hid nothing, learning from the mistakes and successes of countless civilizations. Those children would grow up in a galaxy where truth was valued more than pride, where learning was valued more than being right, where growth was valued more than perfection. They would face new challenges that no species had ever encountered before, but they would face them with knowledge and wisdom gathered from across the galaxy. As the transport ship entered hyperspace and began its journey toward Earth, Lisa felt something she had never expected to feel about the future. She felt hope. Back in the open library, Dr. Kevin Murphy's presentation was being shown once again to a new group of beings who had never seen it before. The images of human failure and growth played across the giant screens while young aliens watched with fascination. When the presentation ended, a small Zephyrian student raised her crystalline hand and asked a question that would have been unthinkable. 6 months earlier, Dr. Murphy, she said, "Can you teach us how to look for the mistakes in our own history? We want to learn how to learn from them like humans do." And in that question, Kevin heard the sound of an entire galaxy beginning to grow again.